Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing excellent. Welcome back again, working on the right-hand drive FC. Today I need to start working on the fuel system. The fuel system we're building is to be forward compatible for the engine swap with the high flow and everything like that, but also just want to do a general improvement, making sure everything is using AN lines, no hose clamps on hard lines, and want to improve over the system I built for the car, the first FC last time. I've been trying to mock things up on the burnt FC, work with the right-hand drive FC, and I've tried to film this video. This will be, I think, the third time. And it's also the third time I just personally try to take a crack at the project. And I'll talk to you a little bit about the challenges I'm having with that, but it's all learning experience, it's all good, and I think I'm getting pretty close to being dialed in on what I need to do to make the system work really well. So let me show you what we're going to start with today, which I think is the linchpin of everything that I've been working on for this project. So right here you can see a lot of the different supplies and parts I'm working with. This is not all of it by any means, but this is what I'm going to be working with to start. So this is hardline, obviously. Here I have compression fittings, so these are what I'm going to use to convert our fuel lines to AN male. And this is the linchpin. This big unit right here is an ID750F, an Injector Dynamics fuel filter. It's one of the best fuel filters that's available, and highly recommended for anybody running E85 in your fuel. Now, especially if you're going to run a rotary with premix, you really need a really good fuel filter for all the craziness that can happen with that. So we need this filter to protect the engine and our expensive components such as our fuel pump and our injectors. Now, what I had previously run on this, which made me mount it in a weird location, was this is a -6-8 adapter and a -8 O-ring boss, which stuck in here like this, and it had this kind of awkward sticking out thing. And I realized, just doing a quick search, that oh my gosh, they make -8 O-ring boss to -6. So now I'm going to be able to have a much slimmer profile on here and figure out where to get this thing mounted, because once I get that done, I think the work I've done so far will make it pretty smooth to move on to the rest of the fuel system. So if we look down here, you can see this thing right here is the stock fuel filter. Now, because I'm going to be adapting all the hard lines, it would be best to keep this in the stock location or somewhere near it, so I can just work off of all the existing hard lines. This unit is quite a bit bigger, and even with the more condensed fitting there, you can see how far it sticks out. I'm hitting the firewall over here. So I still think it's possible, but it might need to be shifted forward a little bit, because there is actually a good amount of space behind this wiring thing right over there. So I think that's what's going to be able to work. There is a few more, it's hard to see, a few more things down there that I can maybe convert it to mounts. But yeah, that's where I want to try and put it. Also, the stock mount is on these nice rubber vibration isolators, so I'd like to utilize those as well. So this piece here is actually the mounting bracket off of the other FC, and this bolts onto those two rubber vibration isolators with two 10mm bolts, and it's actually like annoyingly perfect, because if you just want to strap this thing on there, the curvature already matches pretty well on that. And if I could just find a way to make it fit, it would be quite magical, but I don't think it's going to work. But I think right now what I need to do is uninstall that fuel filter, which can get messy with all the gas still in the vehicle, so I got to depressurize, do all that stuff. So I'm going to work on getting that out of there, and then I'll show you what progress I'm making. So I got the fuel filter out, but I have changed my mind, because I was messing around with placing it down there, messing with the bracket, yada yada, and then I was just like, wait a minute. Right here is perfect. Clears everything. It's right next to the fuel line. I don't have to mess around with anything. I can see the gauge, and I can manually change the filter on this, which looks like kind of like an oil filter. It's amazing. All I have to do is be brave enough to drill 3 holes into my firewall of this new to me car, but I think it's just going to be worth it. And I have like a quick shot there and everything, and it's going to stay out of the way of even the coils that I put in here. And yeah, it just makes the most sense, and it still works with the 90-degree fitting pointing down. It like lines up right with the fuel lines there, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm getting my riv nut kit ready to go. Gonna mark it off and drill some holes. And just like that, we have a beautifully mounted ID 750F. That is definitely the way to go. So now my plan is to take a hard line from this part and go all the way down and connect it to the factory hard line using those adapters. So now I need to go underneath the car and figure out where I want to cut the factory hard line. And this is a big moment, because once I do that, I mean, we're committed. There's no more fooling around with anything. Once we cut the factory hard line, we could immobilize the vehicle, which is fine because I can push it in and out. So I kind of thought of that, but that's one of the reasons I've been waiting on doing this, because you know, you don't want to take the car down if you don't have to. So now if I'm going to start messing with those fuel lines, I got to get the fuel lines disconnected at the pump so we don't have gas flowing everywhere. So again, I'm going to work on that and then come back to you. So now here comes one of the trickier parts. So this is the compression fitting I'm going to use to adapt my about 5/16, more like 7mm fuel lines to -6 AN. So this little piece in the middle gets slotted in here, and when you tighten these two pieces down, it creates a compression fitting with the tapered pieces on both sides of that little olive ferrule thing. So I need to be able to seat the line all the way down into this in order to make a good fitting that hopefully doesn't leak. Now, if you've looked at your stock fuel lines, you know that they have different dimples in them, or bead rolls, to make sure that your stock fuel lines hold on really well. And also they have these ridges on them to create natural stops for when you're sliding on fuel line. So I have to work between those or cut after it to figure it out. So I'm going to take you underneath the car with me now, and I'll show you what I'm working with. Okay. So right under here is where we're working, and I've already popped some things loose so I can get this freed up. And this is the stock fuel feed line. And you can see what I'm talking about. This bead is rolled right here so that the stock fuel line has plenty of bite, the rubber hose. And this is to stop it so you know you've gone on far enough. And then the hose clamp goes right here. So I'm wondering if I can cut just behind this bead roll here, this flare, and have this be enough length for everything to fit. Now if it doesn't, because of the curvature of this, I'm going to need to cut it back behind this bracket, which I would prefer not to do, because then when I'm not going to be able to use this to hold it stably in place without modifying this bracket, and I just hopefully don't have to get there. So let me try. I'm going to use my little pipe cutter, see how close of a tolerance I can get on this. Okay, so I got it cut off, and I'm just doing a test fitting. I don't have the little piece that goes in there, but I'm able to slide that all the way down, and then this fitting is able to bottom out, which is what you need. Boom. So I'm going to go get the little brass piece, tighten those down, and then we're on our way to making this work today. That's exciting. All right, so there she is installed. Now the real challenge with this is, I think that's installed perfectly, but I won't be able to test it until I get the rest of this hooked up. And what if it leaks? So fingers crossed. Now I'm going to move on to making this hardline. So to make the hardline, we got to use this aluminum tubing. We got to use this beautiful bender here. And we got to use this flare tool to make a flare. So what I'm going to do is kind of get the flare, get the end on here, attach it to where I want it to be attached on the fuel filter first, and then run it down and match it to the other part of the line that we just put that fitting on. Okay, so we got, sorry, I'm trying to get this in here so you can see, snake it in here. All right back here, you'll see our aluminum line goes down and is attached to the fuel filter there. Then we sneak up underneath, and you will see there we have our connection to our stock fuel line. So I just realized that there is actually a way I can pretty quickly test if any of this stuff is leaking. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and pop on a fitting I have here. It's a 90 degree, and I actually have some AN to barb fittings, so I should be able to slip on the stock fuel line into the fuel rail and then go ahead and pressurize the system. So I'm going to give that a shot. Got all the fittings tightened up. If you look down here, you'll see I made a little loop-de-doo, and this is the factory fuel line. This is a barb fitting into the dash 6 there. So now we're going to test for leaks. Oh boy. Okay, fuel hanger's back connected. Okay, good. Let's see. Fingers crossed. If this works, we've made a huge leap forward in the process of getting this fuel system ready. Okay, the fuel pump should be priming. Okay, let's see. I don't see anything there. I don't see anything here. Let's start her up. That was air in the fuel lines. Okay. Nothing there. She's definitely getting fuel. She's running. Nothing leaking there. Nothing leaking here. All right. That is awesome. She is purring. She is purring. So that is super exciting. I am so happy that it worked right off the bat. I've been messing around with that stuff and working on it off camera for quite some time now, so that's a huge relief and a great bit of progress. So the next thing I want to do is get the fuel pressure regulator and the flex fuel sensor in place where they need to be so that that's ready to go as well. So they're going to go most likely right up, let me get some light, behind where the intercooler is. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that off real quick so we can get some clearance. And of course that's not going to be there in the final iteration of the build, but we can at least get these things mocked up. Not going to be able to plumb those today because currently the return line comes off right next to the feed line there, if you can see it. So I can't, the feed line in the different setups is going to come back right off the fuel rail right behind the intercooler there. And the fuel pressure regulator, I don't necessarily want to hook that up just yet, but we can get everything mounted so again that everything just slots in nicely when we're ready to do the engine swap. I think I know how I want to do this. Okay, so here is the fuel pressure regulator. That's sitting here. I have the fittings that I'm going to need to get the fuel lines plumbed in already just sitting on there to mock it up. If I can get my light to stay safe. So this one here, there's one on the other side. It does have to go around the throttle cable here, you can see, but it does fit and it's not going to be interfering with any moving parts. It's zip tied just in place, but I am able to use the mounting brackets behind it to get some riv nuts in there. You know, I love my riv nuts nowadays. So that's the first portion of it. Now the return line comes off the bottom, which I want to run as a hard line again. So I'll have to figure out how to orient these, but I could probably get that to come right under here, under this pinch weld thing. And then for the flex fuel sensor, here's what I'm thinking. Don't roast me because it's zip tied on there. This is just a temporary thing for fitment. I'll make a little bit better bracket to work on this. But this is the fuel pump, fuel filter holder that goes in that stock location that we ended up not using down here. So what I'm thinking is slot this guy down there, because it needs to go in line with the return anyway. Now the return currently comes right here. This is the return. But I can cut that off further back like I did with the fuel feed and get that fitting on there further back. If I want to just slide this guy down here, pop it onto that bracket. Let me work it in here. One and two, like that. See it there? So I think that's going to be what I attempt to do for right now. So I'm going to go ahead and throw some nuts on there so that's in place, and then start mocking up more hardline. So I got some holes drilled to try and run the riv nuts in there, and unfortunately, because of the angle of the firewall above it, I can't fit my riv nut tool in there. Just fine, I can just use nuts and bolts, but also I keep reminding myself this is not the permanent install. I'm just here to measure out fuel lines. So I got it set up there with the zip tie again, the fuel pressure regulator, and I did run some bolts on either side through the holes I drilled just to help keep it organized up and nice and tucked up in there. But now it's time to make some fuel lines. Sorry, my camera died. My other camera died while I was filming, like putting it together and everything, but you kind of get the idea. So I'll show you what I got here. So I ended up putting a 90-degree with a male-to-male fitting on the bottom of the fuel pressure regulator. That helped a lot because it made things much easier to weave through here. So we have the fitting goes on there, and I haven't flared it out yet. I've just been taking the wisdom of fitting it first and test fitting it and then going through all that trouble. But yeah, so we just come down here, make a simple 90, and then it goes right down along the other fuel lines, and you can see I've got the fitting on top of that flex fuel sensor down there as well. So now I can take this out and flare it. I keep having to remove this clutch line bracket to weave it behind there, so it's taking a while. But I got it down in there, and I think it's going to work out. So I'm going to flare it out and install that, and we'll see how it finally fits. Alright, so here's our piece that we made for the fuel pressure regulator to the flex fuel sensor. Nice flares, fittings are on there, and it's the shape and size that we need. So to continue to work on that section, I actually can't do it on here because I need to be able to drive this car around and move it like I mentioned earlier. And so I can't cut into that return line because I'm not ready to plumb that section of the fuel system. So I already mentioned that earlier. So what I'm going to do is uninstall the fuel pressure regulator from where it wasn't really installed, and take out the flex fuel sensor. We're going to move to the side of the house, be able to mock that up on the burnt FC, which is one of the only benefits of having a car that's not running. And then when we're ready to put everything in here in the final installation, boom, it'll be ready to go. But the F750 super nice fuel filter can stay in here because we've already started the car and it runs just the way it is with that feed line. So that is awesome. The other thing that we're not going to do today is converting the lines from the tank to those hard lines underneath the car to AN. And that's because we have to drop the diff to do that. If you saw the other video, I actually dropped the diff and I've refreshed it off of the S4FC, and I'm going to be pressing in some new bushings because we're actually transferring the S4 driveline here because it has a clutch type instead of viscous LSD, and this one actually only has an open differential. And we need to do the entire drivetrain if we're going to do that. So transmission, drive shaft, and differential, and it's all in the subframe with the new bushings and everything. So we're going to do that then because we can't access those fuel lines to do all this kind of work without the subframe dropped. So that's where we're going to leave that for now. So right now I'm going to put the car back together, get her out of here, and then tomorrow I'm going to pick it up for you guys right on the side of the house. I'll be back immediately. All right, so as promised, I'm over here on the side of the house wrapping things up, and here's what I'm working with. So I got the flex fuel sensor mounted here. We got our hard line ran up here. Now not everything is tightened completely down, so it's got a little bit of movement, and also this is not secured, so it looks a little tight on the clearances here, but when it's tightened up and where it needs to be, it should clear everything pretty nicely. I made the soft lines, which I'll show you in a second, but down here again I'm going to fabricate a mount to adapt this so that this is better than zip ties. But if I sneak underneath here, it's kind of dark, but I think there's enough light here for me to show you. Yep, you can see it. So here's the bottom coming out, and it comes along here, and I was able to cut this line as practice. You can see behind it there a little bit. Oops. There. But I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to cut the other one in the exact same place, so I'm just leaving myself plenty of length. This bend here does not come down below this control arm bushing mount, so I think it's going to be plenty safe right there, just like everything else was here. And again, it's hard line, not flexible line, so it should be good. Now, if I lift up the upper intake manifold, which is going to take 2 hands. I can show you the voila. So we have our primary and secondary fuel rail. I have the flexible lines made here. They go into the fuel pressure regulator. Fuel pressure regulator comes down to our hard line, which goes to the flex fuel sensor. And this I made off camera in a previous video. This is our input Y splitter into those fuel rails, and that comes from the F750, which is on the other vehicle. So I've got it plumbed in here with our little flexible line, and I just left plenty of length over there so that we can cut that up and make it into a nice fitting on the F750 when it's all in the vehicle. Again, did not get the rear fuel lines taken care of, and I guess technically we wouldn't have to, but we are going to be converting those to AN. We're going to do that when we drop the subframe on the other car. They're pretty difficult to get to because they're actually above the fuel tank. We're not planning to drop the fuel tank, so hopefully we have good luck with that. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. This is a project I've tried multiple times, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video. Wasn't able to get it done. And now it's looking great and it's really functional, and even the part that's installed in the car is not leaking. So that is super encouraging, and just another big thing out of the way for pulling this motor out, putting it in the FC, or the right-hand drive FC. So big things we're waiting for right now are exhaust components and V-mount intercooler components. So stay tuned for those videos as we mock those up on this vehicle as well and get it ready to be installed in the right-hand drive FC. As always, please leave us a like or a comment. Stay tuned for more content. Be kind to each other out there, and remember, when they ask you, tell them you want more.